Welcome here today. We are gathered here at this webinar hosted by MDPI to talk about the development of children. First and foremost, I would like to give a warm thanks to our speakers today, Dr. Amy Pan and Professor David Suriel. Before we dig into the presentations themselves, I'd like to talk a little bit about MDPI and introduce our company to whoever's not had contact with us before. We are a pioneer in open access publishing. Everything that we do is to support open science and open access. We have been on the market since 1996. We started small with just one journal called Molecules in Basel, Switzerland, and now we have extended our portfolio with almost 500 diverse and open access journals. We also have large teams that cover most of the continents and help share our vision, values, and we are committed to provide the highest quality of service to our authors, but not only, to our collaborators in general. The webinar today is made possible by the journal Children, that is, as our journals, as well, an international open access peer-reviewed that is meant to disseminate all kinds of research focused on this age in development, clinical, epidemiological, but also transnational science that is relevant to children's health, children's development, and well-being. The journal is published monthly by MDPI, and we encourage you to check the website if you are interested in maybe finding out what special issues we have open, what's the latest research that has been published in this journal. The program for today is rather short. However, I think we will have a great time hearing about the curve of growth charts, the curve of development from Dr. Amy Pan, and then we are going to move on to the dynamic assessment of young children, a presentation held by Professor David Suriel. I'm going to finish the introduction, let our speakers take the floor, and then we are going to have a short Q&A session for whoever's interested in addressing questions, and also a short closing of the webinar. If you're interested what the special issues that are relevant to the webinar are, you can check this hyperlink in the presentation, or I will also post a link to the special issue in the chat. You can go and find out more about this call for paper that has a deadline for manuscript submission on January next year. Before I leave you to our guest speakers today, I'd like to encourage you all to place your questions in the Q&A box. There is a dedicated Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you choose to share them in the chat, make sure that you share them with everyone so that I can see them and move them maybe in the Q&A box. Other than that, I'd like to give a warm welcome again to Dr. Amy Pan from Department of Pediatrics from the Medical College of Wisconsin, and to Professor David Suriel from the Faculty of Education of Bar Ilan University. I do wish you have a wonderful time moving forward. And now, please, Dr. Pan, the floor is yours. We are looking forward to hearing more about your research.
Thank you again, Karina, for the nice introduction, and good morning from Milwaukee. I know it's afternoon for some of you, so good afternoon. So today, my talk is Beyond the Curve, a deep dive into growth charts. Here's an outline of the talk today. I'll go over the CDC versus the WHO growth charts, looking at the samples and the reference population, also the data collection between the two charts. And then I'll move on to focus on BMI growth chart, looking at the 2002 and the 2022 CDC extended charts. Lastly, I will look at BMI as a screening and diagnostic tool. Look at the association between BMI and percent body fat. So why are we interested in growth chart, or why are growth charts important? So the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Child Health and Disability Prevention Program Health Assessment have a guideline that is recommended for pediatricians to do serial measurements for those infants and toddlers less than 2 years of age. Weight, length, and head circumference are recommended. So weight is a primary indicator of health. So either weight gain or weight loss can be signify health issues, and length over time. Monitoring the length over time will give us ideas for what's the growth rate for the specific child. Head circumference is especially important for those younger children, as it indicates brain development. And for those 2 years or older, weight, height, and body mass index, BMI, actually is added to these measurements. It's really to monitor the nutritional status and the obesity. So the recommendation is to plot these measurements on WHO or CDC charts, which are age and gender specific, so that this child's data can be compared to the average population. And in terms of the measurement, they recommend the serial measurements rather than single measurements, because single measurements is just a snapshot of the child's measurement at that time point. And for example, if a child was not feeling well or was ill at that time, the measurement may not be accurately reflect the overall health of the child. Therefore, the serial measurements is like a trajectory of over time. It's much more informative. So all of this is to monitor the overall general health and the nutritional status and growth and development pattern of the children. And this is a data set used to construct the CDC chart, mainly from two surveys. One is the NHES, the National Health Examination Survey, which happens in the earlier days in the data used in this CDC chart is 1960s. And then later on, the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which added the nutrition component because study of nutrition is very important. And then the main part is from these two survey data. And as you can see here, the NHES survey is more focused on the older children, while on the NHANES data, we have younger children. But notice here, the youngest is 2 months. So we don't really have data from 0 to 2 months old. And then there are also supplementary data sets used. For example, the United States vital status statistics, which is birth certificates are used, and the state of Wisconsin or Missouri, these are all birth certificates. And there's a false longitudinal study, which the hospital records are used. And then lastly, the pediatric nutrition surveillance system, which are having the selected clinical record used for the study. Notice that all of these are prior to 1996. So for the WHO excuse me. Um, the samples are the reference population is from this multi-center growth reference study, which was conducted between 1997 and 2003. Um, it has a primary growth data from children from across from the world with different ethnic background and culture settings. Below this is a picture showing the 6 countries. United States is one of them, and then Norway among Ghana, India, and Brazil. Um, so this is uh, beyond the United States. Now, looking at the data collection for the CDC growth reference group reference for both less than 2 years of age and older, it's all cross-sectional data. And then, as mentioned earlier, the CDC started at age 2 months, and there are some birth weight and lens data as well. On the other hand, the WHO for those less than 2 years of age, it collected longitudinal data, has weight and birth length at birth, and 1, 2, 4, 6 weeks. And from in the first year, from month 2 to 12, it's monthly data, and the second year it have a bi-monthly data. It's a very rich data set. Um, for those older children, it has mostly it's cross-sectional, except in Brazil and the United States have a longitudinal part component involved. And for so total about 46 roughly 4,700 observations and 4,700 distinct children's data were used for the CDC. And although only 882 children's data used, but you can see that it's almost 19,000 observations um, uh, were used because of the longitudinal data. In terms of exclusion criteria, the CDC only has one exclusion criteria. It's those very low birth weight, less than 1,500 grams. The WHO, on the other hand, use a very stringent exclusion criteria. For those that born at altitude greater than 1,550 meter, as it has been shown that altitude can impact fetal growth. And those with low socioeconomic status were excluded as it has also been shown that socioeconomic status is associated with the different growth pattern. And those mothers smoked during pregnancy or lactation are excluded as excuse me. Um, so those babies that born for those that mother smoked during pregnancy or lactation tend to have also a different growth pattern. The birth weight probably lower than those mother that do not smoke, but then later on they tend to grow faster. So those were excluded, and those with preterm births and multiple births tend to have lower birth weight. They also were excluded. Those with perinatal morbidity and child health condition known to affect growth were also excluded. For the feeding, WHO is quite stringent, so the mothers not willing to follow the feeding recommendations are excluded. The recommendation is to be exclusively or predominantly breastfeeding for at least 4 months, and the introduction of complementary food by age of 6 months, and partial breastfeeding to be continued for at least 12 months. And this is the breastfeeding data. You can see that for WHO chart, 100% were ever breastfed. and also 100% breastfed at 3 months or 4 months. And on the other hand, the CDC data set, only half of them ever breastfed, and even less, a third breastfed at 3 months. And this is the weight for age Z-score curve for boys, and has both WHO and CDC curve plotted. And on the y-axis is the weight in kilograms, and on the x-axis we have age in months. As you can see here, the divergence, there are some differences between these two curves, and the divergence is mainly prior to 6 months. And I think roughly, really at 6 months, it's before 6 months, WHO actually is higher compared to CDC, and it's roughly crosses at 6 months. And later on, around 32 months, there are some crossing again. So this early infancy differences is mainly caused by the design of the study. So WHO has longitudinal data and much richer data set, while CDC have fewer, the sample size is fewer, and also missing 0 to 2 months of data. So CDC growth chart are a growth reference, describes how certain children grew in a particular place and time. In this case, it's between 1963 to 1994 in the United States. And WHO wanted a standard rather than a reference population. So it really depicts how healthy children should grow in ideal condition rather than how they grow in a certain time and place. And there are some limitations for the CDC growth chart. First of all, it's only conducted within the United States, and as shown earlier, it pulled data from different sources, mainly from two national surveys, and then birth certificate, and there's no weight or length data available from birth to 2 months of age. And for those children that are babies, are not appropriately fed, or having chronic disease, are living in substandard conditions, were not excluded. And the percentile calculations for those either very high or low values, the sample size is really small over there, and the statistical method is not really focused on those parts, so those tend to be less accurate. So following the WHO release of the growth standard charts in 2006, CDC and AAP and also NIH, the National Health of Institute of Health, they convened a meeting of a panel of experts, and they recommend that for infants and toddlers less than 2 years of age, WHO growth chart growth standard chart should be used, and the children aged 2 or older to 19 years, the CDC growth reference chart should be used. Now I'm gonna switch gear to talk about BMI growth charts. So this is an example of the 2002 CDC BMI for age percentile. On the y-axis, you see the BMI, which is body weight in kilograms divided by the square of height in meters. And on the axis is age. So this data point I'm pointing to is for 15 year old girl who has a BMI of 20. So if this for this girl, if it's right at the 50th percentile, which means about her BMI is about right in the middle, more than larger than like half of the 15-year-old girls in the reference population. And this is BMI categories based on the 2002 charts. So for those less than fifth percentile, it's classified as underweight. And between 5th to the 85th is healthy weight. Between 85th and 95th is overweight. And beyond, if it's greater than 95th percentile, it's classified as obese. And this is the data from the NCHS Health eStats. It has the prevalence of obesity among children and adolescents aged 2 to 19 years. It has both boys and girls. And you can see that in the 1970s, that's roughly 5% obesity, which why, that's why it's recommended 95 greater than 95 is obesity considered. But as you can see over the years, the obesity has increased dramatically. And by the time of 2017 to 2018, that's roughly over 20% obesity for boys and roughly probably 17 or 18% for girls. And this is not even considered the severe obesity of roughly 6% and the 16% overweight. And this is another graph showing the obesity by age group. So again, in the early, this we have more data from the 1960s. And you can see that in the earlier data, it's roughly give or take 5%, but it's increased over time across all different age groups. So again, it's increased almost close to 15-20% in the 2017 or 2018. And that's the data from the United States. We also have the data here for the prevalence of childhood overweight and obesity worldwide. The panel A and B has the across different regions or countries, and you can see that although there are some variability, but overall the trend is going up, and the projection is gonna the projected overweight and obesity is gonna be even more later on. And then the lower panel shows the across different income levels. Again, this is also increasing. There's also increasing trend. So really, overweight and obesity has become a global pandemic. And there are some limitations for the 2000 CDC BMI growth chart. First of all, it's based on the reference data from the 1963 to 1980. At that time, the childhood obesity is the prevalence is low. And then it lacks the high percentiles data. The reference population had too few children with high BMIs. So makes it we cannot really track or monitor the BMI for children with severe obesity. And the maximum plottable BMI is 37 kilograms per meter squared. So to address those limitations, those issues in the 2002 CDC charts also address the increased risk of childhood obesity. The CDC developed the 2022 extended BMI growth chart based on additional data from 1999 to 2016. And they used updated statistical method for children and adolescents with high BMI values. So beyond the 95th percentile, 4 additional curves were provided: the 98th, 99th, 99.9th, and 99.99th percentile. were added. And this is a comparison of the two charts. So the 2000 charts is based on reference data in the earlier time where the obesity prevalence was lower than today. While the 2022, the extended chart included additional reference data for children with obesity. And then the maximum plottable BMI is 37 in the 2000 chart, while in the extended chart is much higher, it's 60. And the old chart does not show percentile curves above the 95th percentile. Now, as mentioned earlier, 4 additional curves are added above the 95th percentile. So the old chart are not recommended for use in children with BMI above the 97th percentile. And the updated charts were able to use the updated statistical method to calculate BMI percentiles for children with very high BMIs. And going back to the BMI categories, which classified based on the percentile range, there are no changes from underweight, healthy weight, or overweight. Even obesity is still classified as above 95th percentile. But now we added several severe obesity categories. The severe obesity is defined as greater than or equal to 120% of the 95th percentile, or a BMI greater than or equal to 35. And then class 2 obesity is 120% to 140% of the 95th percentile, or BMI between 35 to 40. Class 3 is over 140% of the 95th percentile, or a BMI greater than or equal to 40. This is an example of the chart for both at the top is the girls and at the bottom is are the boys. So the black is a little bit hard to see. As the resolution is not that great. Sorry about that. And the black one is the 95th percentile. And there are the 4 added curve are in blue. And then also the 120% of the 95th percentile and 140% of the 95 percentile are plotted in yellow. And you can see that before age of 6, the 120th percentile of 120% of the 95th percentile actually is above the 98th percentile, and then later on it's quite similar to the 98th percentile. So now I want to talk about the BMI and percent body fat. So childhood obesity is really a significant predictor of obesity in adulthood. It can cause serious health problems. For example, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea, and certain cancer. It's associated with has some psychological and social effects. For example, the obese children may have low self-esteem and anxiety issues or depression issues. In terms of economic impact,
ארז, אני בזום עכשיו, אוקיי? עוד שעה.
in terms of economic impact, the children with obesity, the medical costs are much more than those healthy children. In the short term or even long run, it's really have a burden, medical burden. And it's really the excessive adipose tissue is a primary driver of comorbid conditions rather than the total body weight. So that's why body fat measurements are superior indicator of obesity, but it's tend to be hard to measure. So BMI is used as a screening and diagnostic tool. It does have limitations. It's cannot distinguish between fat and fat-free mass. It does not directly, because it only uses the height and weight, so it does not directly measure body composition and fat content. So it tend to under or over detect excess body fat in certain race and ethnic groups. And it does not account for fat distribution. For example, the abdominal fat tend to be more detrimental, but it doesn't count for that. And there's limited sensitivity for detecting excess body fat. And this is a study done back in the 2009, the Pediatric Rosetta project. It was roughly in 600 boys and girls. So in this figure, you can see that on the y-axis has the percent body fat, and on the x-axis is the age in years. And the gray dot are those children with a BMI for age less than 95th percentile, based on the CDC charts. And the solid triangle are those children with 95th to 98th percentile. And the open triangle is those greater than 99th percentile. And in this study, they also modeled the curve for the 85th percentile of the percent body fat, which is this dotted line here. And you can see that there are some green dots above the line. Those are false negatives. So none of these children with excess body fatness. And then also the triangle, the solid triangle below this line, those are false positives, obese children without excess body fatness. Well, overall, they concluded that there's the direct measurement, the BMI is well correlated with the direct measurement of body fat. And this is, there are some studies for body fat relative to BMI. So the general characteristic of body fat percent is less in boys than girls, and it's correlated with the stage of sexual maturation. It tends to be higher in white subjects than blacks. And there are differences in body fat percent by race, which are not consistent by BMI categories. So BMI percentile is not an equivalent indicator of body fatness. In summary, for children less than 2 years of age, WHO chart should be used. And for those 2 years or older, CDC chart is recommended. And for children at or below the 95th percentile, the 2002 CDC BM for age growth chart can be used. But for those children above the 95th percentile, they extended the 2002 CDC BMI chart should be used. And BMI can be used as a screening tool for body fatness and risk among children. But further research is needed to look at the association between long-term health risk and particular BMI values in children. For example, the cutoff points need to be further explored, and gender and race may play an important role. And that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Pan. Thank you for your fascinating look on how we track this physical development of children. I have to admit there are a few things I didn't know, and I find it fascinating to see how the tracking of development evolves from a century to another. And now with the spread of open access and open science, I hope that we can maybe reconvene in a few years and see the true impact, of what we measure today on the children's lives later in the development. We have two questions for you, but I'd rather keep them for the end of the webinar, just to have more of a structure to this event. And now I'd like to shift gears and move from physical development to the cognitive potential. Our next speaker is Professor Turiel. He's a distinguished figure in his field. As I've learned recently, he has involvement in training scholars worldwide, and he's going to be honoring us today with a presentation on how we can use dynamic assessment to look at the potential the children have when learning. So please, Dr. Turiel, I invite you to share your screen, and you can start the presentation.
So my talk is
Perfect.
about dynamic assessment for young children, theory and applications. I prepared a very long slideshow, but I'm not sure I will have time to show you all of this, but at least I will give you an appetite to look for this idea. There is a problem with millions of children around the world who, from many reasons, have a higher intellectual ability, but because of sociological, ecological, all kinds of um, uh, uh, environmental problems, they cannot actualize their learning potential, they cannot actualize their abilities. And when they are examined or tested by a static psychometric standardized test, they are penalized because those tests do not show their high ability. And because of that, they are getting a kind of education that is much below their ability, which cause another damage to the children because they do not really treat it well according to their true ability. So there was a need to develop another type of assessment, which is called dynamic assessment. So what is dynamic assessment? Dynamic assessment refers to an assessment process that involves an active teaching approach to evaluate a child's perception, learning, thinking, and problem-solving ability. The idea is that we are teaching the child within the test situation and looking for changes, or what I call cognitive modifiability of the child, as indication for the modifiability of the child later on, if the child will get the proper treatment in order to actualize his learning potential. So the process of dynamic assessment aims to modify an individual's cognitive functioning and observe subsequent changes in learning and problem-solving patterns within the testing situation. So whatever we get in the testing situation is an indication of what might happen in the future if a proper education, proper treatment is given to the child. Those of you who are more interested in this topic and to go dive deeply into this concept are invited to look into the book that I published by Springer in 2021. It's called Mediated Learning and Cognitive Modifiability. Now, during the last 50 years, I developed 8 dynamic assessment instruments. Each of them is measuring a different aspect of child's abilities, cognitive abilities. But I must say that in dynamic assessment is a holistic approach. We are assessing not only the cognitive abilities, but also non-intellective factors that are related to cognitive abilities, such as intrinsic motivation, um, um, level of confidence in giving answers, kind of feelings of competence, and so on. So there are many non-intellective factors that are no less important than the pure cognitive aspects. So I will not go to everyone. Of course, I need a whole year to teach these instruments. I'm coming from a theory that is called a mediated learning experience. It is to in some way related to Vygotsky's sociocultural theory, but mainly to Feuerstein's theory of mediated learning experience. And I applied this theory first to dynamic assessment, as you can see on the left side. And also in dynamic assessment, there are different areas related, like working memory, learning disabilities, young children, typically developing children, intellectual disability, and so on. I also did a lot of studies on mediated learning strategies and how they impact the learning abilities of children. So I looked into mother-child interactions, siblings interactions, teachers-child interactions, and peer mediation. I also was involved in building the theory, for example, validation of the MLE strategies and validation of cognitive modifiability concept, social implications of the ability, the measuring children's abilities as social implications, because many children who are in a low socioeconomic status and considered to be with low intellectual abilities, it is not correct. Of course, we are making many mistakes about these children. And also I developed all kinds of intervention programs, cognitive education programs, in order to enhance the abilities of children. Another line of research was spatial and math, especially gender differences in spatial orientation and math capacities, mental rotation, math discourse, and math achievements. So this is another line of research. And the last line of research is related to culture. So I was looking into transmission of mediated learning experience strategies from mothers to children and from grandmothers to mothers and mothers to children. So to see the line of transmission of strategies, which means if the grandmother has a qualitative type of mediating to her child, it goes to the mother and the mother brings it to the child. I was looking for testing effects in different cultures, cultural differences in mediating learning experience, cognitive development in different cultures, and learning potential in different cultures. Of course, I don't have time to go through each line of research, but just to show you what is the scope of the research that I'm involved in the last 50 years. My in my career, I was impressed from two philosophers and psychologists. One is Semyonov Lev Vygotsky, is that you see it on the left side, and Professor Reuven Feuerstein on the right side. So they defined mediated learning experience. What is mediated learning experience that is so important in when using dynamic assessment and also in all kinds of interactions between adults and young children. So MLE, which is abbreviation of mediated learning experience, is an interactional process in which parents or substitute adults like grandparents or uncles or big brothers and so on, or peers or teachers interpose themselves between a set of stimuli and the learner and modifying the stimuli for the developing child. Of course, children are exposed directly to information, but according to those psychologists, theoreticians, the most important factors that affect cognitive modifiability is the mediated learning between the mediator and the child. They are more influential than the direct exposure to stimulation. Vygotsky's social cultural theory, he defined the ZPD, the zone of proximal development, and it was defined as the distance between a child's actual developmental level as determined by independent problem solving and the higher level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers. So every individual, according to this theory, functions on two levels. The lower level, which is the actual level of functioning, and the potential level. And in between, there is a zone. And the role of the mediator within dynamic assessment and in everyday education, everyday interaction, is to bring the two levels closer, which means to raise up the actual level toward the potential level. Because every individual, by definition, this is like an axiom, has a higher potential development than the actual level of performance. The definition of cognitive modifiability, which is the result of dynamic assessment. So it is defined as an individual propensity to learn from new experiences and learning opportunities and to change their own cognitive structures. Once the child learns how to learn, then it becomes an ultimate mechanism, a spontaneous ultimate mechanism of change, because the individual is learning, is teaching himself. He doesn't need any more mediation because the individual can mediate to him or herself. There are main characteristics of the theory of Feuerstein of structural cognitive modifiability. One is permanence, which means the endurance of cognitive changes over time or the durability of the change. So if we teach a child a concept, then the concept is fixed, is durable. It will not be changed. It will be structured into the brain. The other characteristics is pervasiveness, which means the diffusion process in which changes in one part affect the whole. For example, if I'm intervening to change individuals, let's say spatial orientation, these changes will not stay only in the domain of spatial orientation. They will be transferred in a kind of diffusion process to other aspects of intellectual abilities. And the third component or the characteristic is centrality of the change. It is the self-perpetuating, autonomous, and self-regulating nature of cognitive modifiability. This is like we are installing like a nuclear plant within the brain. so that it does not need refueling. It is very central in changing the individual. I'll give you an example. When I'm teaching my kids, well, they are grown up now, but I have 26 grandchildren. So when I work with them, I teach them left and right in their hands, and then I teach them left and right from the other side, from the opposite side. For a 5 years old, for example, it's very difficult for a child to grasp the idea that my right is to his left. And so I have to teach him the opposite and how positions are in opposite direction when I'm facing them. So once they learn how to do it, they can apply it in many different situations and many different uh, um, contexts, not only in the context of interaction with me. So this means that I installed in the child the concept of opposite of directions. Okay, so there are shifts of dynamic assessment from static testing. The first is changing goals of assessment. The goal of assessment in dynamic assessment is to look for the learning potential and not so much for the actual ability of the child. It's what the child can do in the future and not what he is doing right now. And I can develop it, but I don't have enough time. Change in nature of tasks. The tasks in dynamic assessment are built for learning. So when I present an item to the child, a problem, this problem, if the child learns how to do it, it will prepare the child for the next item. And the next item prepares the child for the next one, and so on. It's like a ladder. We are climbing up from simple problems to more and more difficult, abstract problems, because there is a teaching, and I can see in the teaching process how the child is implementing what he has learned. He is implementing it in future tasks. Another aspect, another shift is shift in the change in test situation. The test situation is more flexible. I can joke with the child. I teach the child. I'm allowing teachers and parents to observe the situation. Later on, when I give the report, they can understand why do I come to the conclusions? Why do I make inferences? Because they saw what I am doing with the child. So also the child feels more safe in this teaching situation than in a very strict and rigid standardized situation. So he behaves differently, because my role as an examiner is not only to teach the child how to learn, but also to change the emotional aspects in the situation. Many children come very apathetic, very distant into the situation. They are afraid, they are anxious, but step by step they become more relaxed and they reveal their inner intrinsic motivation. And the changes is also a criterion for change, and I also report it in the psychological report. Another shift is change of focus from end products to process orientation. And this is a big one, because I'm interested to know not only what the child achieve or perform, like the end result of the performance. I'm interested to know what is the process of learning. What are the barriers for learning? Some children are very impulsive and they fail in tests, not because they are not able. They fail because they are impulsive. Impulsive children fail. I look for the executive functions of working memory. I'm trying to develop the working memory of the child. I'm trying to teach the child how to look at several sources of information. I teach the child to be to develop a systematic exploratory behavior, and so on and so on. There is a list of about 30 deficient cognitive functions that I'm working on them during the dynamic assessment. And I want to see what cognitive functions are changed, what are more adamant to changes. They're difficult to change. And so I get a rich information what exactly to do with the child. So my report is much richer in terms of giving the teacher um, uh, um, actual recommendations of how to work with the child. And there is also change in interpretation of results. I'm not trying to compare the child to his peers. I'm trying to compare the child to him or herself. So the interpretation is to look how much the child changed, because this change is giving me a clue of what to do with the child in the future. And how much it can be changed, and what exactly to do with the child, what specific recommendations or remediation processes are needed in order to change the child. So the interpretation of results is totally different than in a static assessment. So here is a phrase by Einstein: the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Do you believe? Einstein says that. He was not an educator, right? He was a physician, physicist, right? So, but he was very much interested in education. Also, another phrase of Einstein: education is not the learning of facts, it's rather the training of the mind to think. And this is exactly what we are doing in dynamic assessment. We are training the mind to think, and we are looking for changes within this testing situation as indication for change in the future. Here's another thing, and with that I'll finish with Einstein, promise. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. Here is the importance of human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. This is, by the way, this is related to artificial intelligence that we are all now interested. What is the role of artificial intelligence? And I believe that artificial intelligence is helping individuals, but without the touch of a human being, artificial intelligence can destroy children's abilities. And I gave a lecture last July in a conference in Prague, and the whole lecture was about that. Here is another saying by Charlie Chaplin: all children have talents. What is important is to reveal them. This is exactly the dynamic assessment. The child, by axiomatically, he has potential, but how can reveal it? How do we reveal it? Do we reveal it by just asking question and getting answer? Or we reveal it by trying to change the individual and see how much change we can do? The higher the change, the higher we reveal the possibility of the child to develop his brain. So I developed a transactional model of cognitive, emotional, motivational, family, peers, and cultural factors. If you are moving one of the wheels, it also moving the other wheels as well. For example, if you are intervening in emotional, motivational factors, by definition, you are going to move the cognitive factors as well. you are moving also the family and peer system, and so on. Every wheel is moving the other wheels as well. So everyone is connected to everyone. This is a kind of transactional model, a holistic model. So the theory of mediated learning experience is that you have a stimulus on one end, you have a response on the other hand. In between, there is the organism. So the organism is getting information from the stimulus, and the organism processes the information, and then there is an R, a response. However, in between, there is the H. The H is the human being that is taking the information, taking the stimulus, and modifying it so that the organism can swallow it, can process it. But the H, the human being, is teaching the organism not only how to process the information, but also how to express it to the outer world. This is also the responsibility of the mediator, to teach the child how to give responses, not to be impulsive, not to have egocentric type of communication, to not to have trial and error behavior, and so on and so on. These are just a few examples what the human being can intervene. How much time do I have? How much time do I have? Do I have a lot of time?
You can go on for 10 more minutes if you'd like.
10 more minutes. Okay, I will skip some because, as I told you before, the slides show is, but I'll make it very, very simple here. The prism, you know that light is not broken. Light goes only in straight lines. However, in the prism is taking the light, and where it comes out from another position in many colors. So the prism is the mediator. He takes the information and he gives it to the child in such a way that you will see the full spectrum of the colors, because many children are exposed to the information, but they don't know how to interpret the information. They don't know how to look at it. So the role of the mediator is to spread the light and show the child all the spectrum of colors that exist in the information. This is the kind of analogy that I give to mediation in few words. So Feuerstein developed different strategies of teaching, and I did many studies where I videotaped interactions, and I tried to quantify the quality. The mother-child interaction, for example, as qualities of mediation. How much the mother has intentionality in teaching the child, how much meaning she gives to the child, labeling information, giving significance, how much she transcends the information by giving principles and rules and so on, how much she gives the child feelings of competence, or arranging the environment so that the child will not have failures, how much is self-regulating the child by inhibiting his impulsivity and teaching him strategies how to go around. So how much he's sharing information, thoughts, and feelings, those are strategies of mediation. There's some more. I don't have time to go over all of them, so I will just skip. And so in my studies, I looked into these mediation strategies, and I looked how these mediation strategies of the parents have an impact on the cognitive modifiability of children. And I found again and again and again that children who grew up at homes where a high quality of mediation was given, and I could empirically measure it, when they go to other contexts, home contexts or daily life contexts, they become much smarter. They use their learning principles that they learn at home and internalized it, and they can use it in other contexts, and they become much more successful because they have the inner structure of knowing how to learn. This brings me to a very hot topic these days. What is the role of AI or or the computer in teaching children? Can artificial intelligence replace human mediation? So here is two contrast pictures. Here is the computer is telling the child, oh, wonderful, you did it well, and there is a problem that the child solves. Or what if the child cries? Can the computer give the child some consolence? Can he really take care of the emotional aspects of the children and replace the human being? I'm presenting this as a question for the future, for future research. To my opinion, based on many, many years of experience as a clinical psychologist, as educational psychologist, I can tell you no computer can replace human being interaction. I'm not against computers. They are fantastic. They can enhance learning, but always we need the touch of a human being to be with a computer. This is the winning team. If a human being with a computer working together to enhance the thinking skills of children. So I did several studies with mediation in a computerized environment, and there are advantages and disadvantages. First, there is a possibility to register simultaneously many task-solving behaviors and record them with a high level of resolution when we are using the computers. And I'm talking about dynamic assessment because the trend now is to do dynamic assessment in a computerized way, showing results immediately after testing, because we can give the computer all the technical aspects, so we don't have to deal with all the technical aspects. Observing the sequence of behaviors meticulously, which a human being cannot always grasp the situation. Enables the examiner to focus on mediation processes rather than on the technical aspects of recording the child's behavior. Impersonal aspects of computerized assessment may help reduce anxiety levels caused by sensitivity to human testing. With some children, not with all of them. With some children could be helping. Inadequacy of computer programs, no matter how sophisticated they are, in revealing implicit signs of emotions. Anxiety, motivation, excitement. I mean, the human brain is so much developed that it can smell how the child feels. And I'm using it with quotation marks. Some individuals respond more positively when they encounter human interactions, but react negatively and with less motivation when tested by a machine. Fostering a social and therapeutic bond between the teacher and the learner. The bond cannot be done with a computer. You cannot relate to a computer as you relate to another human being in front of you. The emotional bond. No machine can replace the mediation strategies of a human being's intentionality. Computers do not have intention. They don't know who you are behind the screen. They cannot give meaning, okay? And when I said meaning, it's the affect, the meaning behind it, okay? The emotional aspect of it, and feelings of competence. If the computer is telling you, oh, this is very good, you know, it's a machine telling you, it's not a human being. Sense of presence exists only by human mediation. I-thou interaction. Here I'm going to philosophical views. Martin Buber was a very well-known philosopher who made a distinction between I-thou and I-it. The I-thou relationship exists only when there is a presence of another human being. The computer does not reflect any presence. I mean, the someone, a soul that is in front of you. I'm a little bit not phenomenologist. I don't know. I can give you other philosophers like Louis Sartre and others. Mediation for acceptance of mediation and overcoming resistance to mediation that some children can show us. So the reason for developing dynamic assessment is because there were main criticism on static tests. First, bias towards minority groups and children with special needs. Then selective administration procedures and selective interpretation of results among high-risk children. They are more penalized children from low socioeconomic status or children with special needs. They are penalized in static standardized tests. I cannot develop it anymore because of lack of time. Motivational, emotional, and personality factors are not well taken in standardized tests. Lack of information on learning and metacognitive processes. Inadequate recommendations or remediation processes, specific interventions, and prescriptive teaching. In dynamic assessment, it's much richer and give full high resolution recommendation what exactly to do with the child in order to enhance these intellectual abilities. Now, first I developed a list of deficient cognitive functions and such as they are important keys for understanding children's learning processes. They are compounds of native abilities, learning habits, attitudes toward learning, motivational orientation, and cognitive strategies. So we have cognitive functions in the input phase of thinking, the elaboration phase of thinking, and the output phase of thinking. I will skip all of them because, again, I need a whole semester to teach them. So I developed 8 different tests. I'm not going to look at all of them. Just the list. I'll skip this list. This is the picture taken in 1995, I think, 30 years ago. I was giving a workshop in Santiago, Chile. And the workshop was how parents should mediate to their children. So I was demonstrating with 2 young children. The lady to my left is the interpreter. They were speaking Spanish. I learned few words in Spanish to communicate with the children with one of my tests. This is the Children's Analogical Thinking Modifiability Test. And after half an hour of working with the children, I saw that they are fantastically doing the problems that I presented to them. And I was so much impressed that I said, there is one of the ladies there with the green is the mother, and there is also a grandmother on the right side on the bottom. You don't see her well. So I say to the parents, wow, these children are like diamonds. And the child, this little child, okay, with a white dress, she said, she's 6 years old. She said, we are diamonds shining in darkness. That's what she said. It was so much impressive to see this metaphor from 6 years old. It's just fantastic to hear that. So this is the first test that I developed, the Children's Analogical Thinking Modifiability Test. For example, well, if you look on problem number 13, okay, this to this, like this to this. So what is the answer? The child has blocks and he has to take the blocks and put it in the last place. If I had time, I would ask one of the participants to give me the answer. But so the answer is, I will show you how I mediate the problem. Okay, this is the way I mediate. Look at the first two and look at the color. The yellow is top, the yellow is bottom. The red is bottom, the red is top. So you see, this is the colors are opposite. So if the colors are opposite in the first couple, the colors will be opposite in the second couple. So the last one will be blue bottom, yellow top. Now, triangle, triangle, circle, circle, and the circle will be blue. So the child takes a blue circle, big, and place it there. Now let's look on the top one. Circle, square. So the friend of the circle is a square, and the friend of this circle is also square. And what is the color of the square? It should be yellow. And this is the answer. It's very difficult to do it, and I have all kinds of episodes and very interesting stories how children refer to this problem. But this is the most difficult problem. The other ones are easy ones. So I do not come to number, by the way, this is for kindergarten children, okay? And they do it in a pre-test. Only 3% can do it correctly, but after a teaching process, I come to 20%. Which means there is a jump of several hundred times of improvement after a short time of half an hour of teaching. This is another test of mine, children's inferential thinking modifiability test. For example, here I'm giving the children 24 cards with different pictures. And they have to place them in the houses at the top. There are 4 houses with different colors: white, black, blue, and red. Now, the problems are at the bottom. The apple and the trousers should go to the houses with lines, okay, in the same row. So the apple and the trousers should go to the white house and the blue house. But we don't know which one will go to which house. So we cannot solve the problem. We have to look at the second row. The rectangle in the car should go to the black and the red, but we don't know which one will go to what. The trousers should go to, in the third row, should go to the white. Wait a minute. Trousers go to the white, then go back to first line. If, this is important word, if the trouser goes to the white, where the apple will go? The apple will go to the blue. Okay, now look at the rectangle and the second row and the fourth row, rectangle, rectangle. It appears twice, but if we compare the houses, it's red and red. So the rectangle go to the red. If the rectangle goes to the red, now what will be in the blue? The apple, because the trousers already we know that it goes to the white. So the apple goes. So this is kind of inferential thinking. We found in many studies that children who grew up in families where the mother is giving qualitative type of mediation, not this thing, not this problem, The mother doesn't know anything about that. She just in daily life situations, she knows how to mediate to the child. When the child goes to testing of kind of inferences, he knows better to do this because he is very meticulous. He has needs for accuracy. He is not impulsive. He has exploratory behaviors and so on and so on. Okay, here is another one. This is the transfer. I will not go into it. This is another test that I developed. This is the most developed one. It's called the cognitive modifiability battery. And what I'm asking children is to reproduce patterns. So I give the child a kind of plate with windows in it, and the child is looking for this pattern, and he has to reproduce this pattern, taking into account the color, the height of the block. As you can see, there are numbers on them. I mean, the numbers are only in the picture, not in the actual blocks, and the position. Okay, so I can see if the child is doing reproduction of patterns impulsively and making mistakes, and I can give a score for the color, for the position, for the number, for the height, and so on and so on. This is one of the. Here is another analogy test. Okay, this is analogy test. Look at TR8. This is a problem. From left to right, whatever happens from left to right on the top happens from left to right on the bottom. So in order to solve this problem, let's first think about the color. What happens from left to right on the top? Okay, the yellow disappears, right? So also at the bottom, the yellow disappears, and the rest is the same. So we need, in the answer, we need only a green and blue. But we see also that from the lowest, number one, it goes to highest. So here we need a green and blue, and they are the highest. Of course, this is a very difficult problem, but after a teaching phase, children grades 1, 2, 3 can solve these problems fantastically. And then the parents are looking at it with open mouth. How come the child sitting in my uh, classroom and I think that they are dumb? How come they do it when I cannot do it myself? And so parents and teachers begin to appreciate the abilities of their children. And so on and so on. I will not go over all the problems. There are all kinds. This is the mental rotation problem. This is a computerized analogical thinking modifiability. It's one of my doctoral students. We developed a um, um, computerized way of looking for cognitive modifiability, and it takes also into account all kinds of executive functions. For example, if the child is too impulsive, how do we know that he's impulsive? If the child is immediately beginning to work on it, it means the child is impulsive. The child should drag the answers. He has a pool of blocks, and he can drag it. Well, I cannot see it to you, show it to you here.
Oh, okay, okay.
Let's finish that first. Okay, so this is the I forgot that there is an explanation in it, and so on. So listen, I don't have time to show you all the richness of these things that I developed during 50 years. So I can tell you that those kind of tests are hilarious. I have all kinds of studies. I don't have time to show you all of these studies. You're invited to go to my papers. You can see in the internet. You can click David Suriel and go to my book published in 2021, and just to show you everything that is related to it. So I think my time is up, right? Sorry.
No problem. You can go through the summary and the conclusion, and we'll take questions after that.
Okay, so conclusions. Emily strategies are causal factors of cognitive modifiability. In typically developing samples, distal factors explain MLE strategies, but do not explain directly cognitive modifiability. A distal factor is socioeconomic status. It can explain why families with low socioeconomic status are not giving mediation. But what explains the cognitive modifiability is the quality of the MLE strategies given by parents. In samples of children with learning difficulties, distal factors and MLE strategies jointly explain cognitive modifiability. The strongest MLE strategy that explains cognitive modifiability is transcendence. Transcendence means expansion, giving rules, generalizations, principles. Usually it is not given largely because I call it the saffron of mediation. You know what is saffron? Saffron is a kind of what you put it in rice to give it good smell, right? You give it in small, but it is very strong. Peer mediation enhances mediators' cognitive modifiability. MLE strategies develop psychological resiliency. Cognitive modifiability is correlated significantly with psychological resilience. And the effects of intervention programs on cognitive modifiability are revealed more clearly by dynamic assessment. And so thank you very much. The picture on the left is me in Vancouver teaching Clarissa. I gave in 1990, well, 35 years ago, I gave a workshop. You see, I'm young there. I gave a workshop in Vancouver, and based on this workshop, there is a movie done by someone in Canada, Gary Marcuse. It's called The Mind of a Child, and the movie gained the Gemini Award, which is the Oscar of Canada for movies. I mean, not fiction movies, but movies. I forgot the name in English of. You can take if you have any questions, if you don't have time to give me questions now and so on, you can take my email and email me, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions. If you have questions now, I'll be happy to answer as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Turiel. It has been really, really nice to hear you so passionately talk about this dynamic assessment and to see all the work that you've done and developed over the years. I'm going to ask the first questions to Dr. Amy Pon first, and then you also have a question from one of the people in our audience, and I'll also like to ask and tie a question with that one. But first, I'd like to ask Dr. Pon. We have a question from Shmuel Yerushalim. If I'm pronouncing that right, I'm sorry if I didn't, but they're asking what impacts of food insecurity and climate instability on growth charts.
Yeah, I think the short answer is it's going to be negatively impact growth or adversely impact growth. So for food insecurity, that means the food availability is low, or the food quality could be low, and you know the children may not have access to the food, or may not have access to high quality food, which will impact the physical growth. For example, the weight gain, or the height gain, or the growth rate will be reduced. And then it will also impact the nutritional intake. So overall, I think this will negatively impact the children's physical growth and also the overall health.
And as an addition to the previous question, in your opinion, how can we see, or are we able to see a direct connection between obesity and low socioeconomic status?
Yeah, I think the answer is yeah. I think there are a few papers actually connecting the low socioeconomic status and the childhood obesity. There are several fold to it. The first is whether the children have access to healthy food or not. And for those low socioeconomic status children in that low socioeconomic status families, they may not have access to healthy food. And then the other thing is, for those with low socioeconomic status, the physical activity, they may not have the opportunity to be physically active. And the third fold would be stress, because it probably coming with low socioeconomic status, coming with high stress, which also lead to maybe mental health issues, and then all of this overall can be linked to childhood obesity.
Thank you so much. And I have a question myself. So you spoke about different tools to evaluate growth of the children. And I know that parents are often really, really concerned about especially numbers when it comes to charts and development, because they might feel lost at the beginning of their parenthood and so on. So based on your work and your experience, what do you advise parents to look out after mostly? I mean, what is a specific thing that you wish parents would understand better about these curves, or how to interpret them?
I think it's have a basic understanding of what the curves really mean. For example, that I showed earlier, there are difference between CDC and WHO. So when you the thing is really to plot whatever data for your child and to on the curve and see where your child compared to the average population, where it is, and if there going to be any concern, really talk with your child's health providers And the other thing is to monitor it over time. One-time measurement is not going to be as important as monitoring it over time. Looking at the trajectory or the pattern is super important.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really clear now. Thank you so much for your presentation and for your answers. I would like to move on now to Professor Turiel. A question from the audience is how does the dynamic assessment approach support effective assessment, especially in children with maybe mental health issues or neurodevelopmental disorders such as ADHD?
Okay. The problem with ADHD children or children with mental health problems is that they very frequently they fail in standardized tests because of their tendencies to be hyperactive, and because they have all kinds of emotional problems that act as barriers in standardized situation. So in dynamic assessment, we try to go around this problem first by teaching the child strategies of how to deal with the hyperactivity. For example, we are asking the child to anticipate verbally the answer before going to point what is the answer. This is with ADHD. I'm giving just one example, okay? There are many, many examples. With children with emotional problems, the whole situation is totally different. Is not threatening the child. I'm approaching the child as a therapist, okay? Because the dynamic assessment person is in a way has a therapeutic relationship with the child, and so we are easing up the situation so that the child will reveal his or her abilities, which is not shown in a standardized way, which is many times is very strict, and children do not feel comfortable with being examined and tested, and there is no interaction in this situation. I mean, there is only, it's a one-way street. The examiner asks a question, he gets the answer. What if the child says, is it correct? You're not allowed to say anything to the child if it's correct or not. So many children feel the artificial kind of interaction, and they are not performing well. They are not showing the true ability. So I think I gave an answer to that.
Yes, indeed. I feel like sometimes, performance anxiety can really become an obstacle with these assessments, and it's important to have a good relationship as an assessor to the child. But what about the gifted children? Does the dynamic assessment help with identifying gifted children?
Yeah, of course. As a matter of fact, dynamic assessment is not meant for gifted children. They don't need to. They don't need to look for the deficient cognitive functions and how to correct them. But we did dynamic assessment with gifted children, and we found the depth, I would say, the height of their abilities. It's even more impressive in dynamic assessment, because you can show the child a very difficult problem, and even without mediation, they immediately understand it, and they can transfer it to even more difficult problem without mediation. So it just shows the giftedness in full colors. But usually we don't need to invest in testing gifted children. I mean, we are not testing them for giftedness because we already they are doing well in standardized tests. We don't need to give them dynamic assessment. But if you give anyhow, you will see even more impressive results than in standardized assessments.
Yes, I was asking in the context of maybe educators or teachers might use this tool or this approach of dynamic assessment and then find out they have gifted children in the classroom. So,
Oh yeah. Sometimes you see the child that you think he's mediocre, he does not show off and so on. And when you test him with the dynamic assessment, you say, "Wow, look at this child! I never knew that he can do such things." So using dynamic assessment with children that are low functioning, but they are gifted. Okay, there are many children who are functioning on a low level, but they are gifted, but nobody can reveal it.
do you think they are on the spectrum, or is it just that they're low in functioning?
Well, some are some on the spectrum, some are not. I mean, not every child that is gifted is on the spectrum. Most gifted children are not on the spectrum. But in dynamic assessment, you can see all kinds of behaviors that tells you that the child is on the spectrum. For example, the need of the child for repetitions, or the need of the child is not responding to rewards, verbal rewards. He is kind of emotionally distant. And so you see that the child cannot handle personal interactions well. So it gives you all kinds of symptoms that direct you to a deeper examination to see if the child is on the spectrum or not.
Thank you so much. It's been so insightful. I'm really interested in this topic because I also used to work with children and I saw, differences in inter-individual differences in terms of neurodevelopmental disorders and so on. And I think that your approach with a dynamic assessment offers a more clear picture on what the child's skills are actually like, not, to base ourselves only on the standard assessment.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you both. We don't have any other questions. I'd like to, before I close the webinar, I'd like to mention that I posted in the chat the link where you can complete a short survey about this webinar and also a link where you can download your certificates of participation from. If anyone is interested in the special issues that are related to this webinar, the link is also in the chat. And I'd like to give a special thanks again to Dr. Amy Pan and Professor Turiel. They have gifted us some ideas that help shed some light not only on the physical development, but also on the cognitive development of children. And I do hope that we can meet again and maybe do another edition with other topics, and Professor Turiel, you can have a more extensive show off of the tasks and tests that you put together. In the meantime, if anyone wants or is interested in your presentations, are they allowed or would you feel comfortable with sharing your presentations via email?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So, as you heard, if you need more details, you can contact the speakers via email. I wish you a good rest of the day for those of you who just started it, or a good evening for us who are in another time zone. Thank you again, and let's hope to meet again under the same circumstances.